Okay, today we're just going to demonstrate how to repair a minor dent using a stud nail gun and a body hammer. Stud nail gun to raise the lows out, and use a hammer to hammer down the highs. So, first of all, you want to grind your area. In order for the stud nail gun to work, any area has to be metal. If there's any paint there, it's not going to make contact, and the nail won't stick to it. So you want to grind it with something coarse, 24 grit. That'll get the paint off really fast. One thing you want to be careful of, though, is not to overgrind this area. This thing can cause some mistakes. Grinding too much metal off is a common mistake. You don't want to do that. And you also, if you keep the grinder in one spot too long, you'll overheat the metal, and that can cause your panel to warp. So you want to keep your panel, your grinder moving, and you want to do it in a buffing pattern. You don't want to do a lot of crisscross at that time because that will remove too much metal. Want to be sure and wear a dust mask and face shield to prevent any injury. And also note, you want to think about what or who's around you. If there's surrounding glass that you're working on, you want to be sure and put a welding blanket on it, because these sparks can pick glass, or there's others working around you. And also, if the grinder's working this way, the sparks are going to go that way. You can kind of direct which way your sparks are going, so kind of keep that in mind. So you're going to kind of go that way, so you might want to move from over there. So basically, to start off with, this is the damaged area right here. I'm going to grind about 4 inches past that. So. Notice how I'm keeping that grinder moving kind of fast. If you keep it in one area, it's going to overheat the metal. Okay, I've got the area grinded. Notice I didn't grind too much, overheat the metal. So you can cause warpage by doing that. You still got the damage. You can feel in here, right around in here, the low area. There's not a lot of lows and highs in this because it's just a minor damaged area. So, and keep in mind too, with these real minor dents, grinding does produce heat. Sometimes that will move some of the dent out on its own. So, but there is still some minor damage right around in this area. So I'll feel a low right there. And you want to be sure that you have your safety glasses when doing this too, because sometimes this will create a spark. That's a nail that we put in here. What this gun does is basically when you pull the trigger and this all makes contact to the metal, it'll just basically weld that onto the metal. So. It's probably such a small dent, probably just one nail is enough. Whenever you see it glow, that's good enough. You don't want to keep it on there too long, or else you'll overheat the metal. You know, about a count to 3, 1, 2, 3, and then let off. That usually is about the right amount. If it's not long enough, your nail's just not even going to stick at all. If it's too long, you might well burn a hole through there, or else get it real hot where you cause a lot of additional damage. So
they make different diameters of the studs.
Yes, there is different diameters. These are the smaller ones. But anyway, this is a body slide hammer. This can be used with your nails. You put them on there, tighten it up, you pop your damage out. However, I really don't like to use these a lot because we want to make the metal go back, you know, to where it belongs. This is going to force the metal. Really don't like to do that. I like to, at the same time, I like to make it multi-pull by tapping in on the highs and pulling out in the lows, kind of rolling the metal back. I'd use this only as a last resort. But as far as this one, I'm just going to use one of these because we don't need a lot of force. This will probably do most of the repairs you need to do. Okay, you put this on there, and this is going to pull up on your low area. And if you remember, there's a little bit of a high area over here. Not a lot, not like your bigger dents are going to have, but it still has a little bit of a high area. So instead of just trying to force that dent out, I'm going to put some force on it. I mean, you got to put, you know, quite a bit of force. You don't want to just hold it. You want to be pulling on it. And I'm going to kind of tap the high area in towards the low area. Get the dent to where you think that it feels pretty good, you can take some something like this to cut this portion of the nail off, and it leaves the little bit on there, so we're gonna have to grind that off. So once we grind that off, we can make sure it's where we want it, and if it is, we can start preparing it for body filler. Spark's gonna go that way, so. Also notice that I kind of go on that lightly. I do not want to just sit there and just grind it till it gets real hot, or you're gonna warp the metal. So let it cool. The last thing you want to do is warp the metal. So once you determine it feels pretty good enough for filler, you're ready to apply the filler. But what do you want to do next? Is we want to prepare it for the body filler. In order to do that, we want to cross grind it and make it just as rough as possible for the body filler to stick. So I'm going to grind out just a little bit bigger of an area, and then I'm going to do a cross grind. We already have felt of it, and we know that it feels good. So once you're to that point, there's no need to touch it anymore. It's really not a good idea to, once it's cross-grinded and the metal's clean, to touch the metal before you add the body filler, because the oils in your hand may cause an adhesion problem. So I'm going to go ahead and cross-grind it and get it ready. Now to do the cross-grind, I'm just going to grind it, and you notice I'm just going to kind of go at angles and just make the pattern cross as much as possible. So now that it's cross-grinded, there's really no need to touch it anymore. Until you have the body filler is Bondo. Bondo is just a trade name like Coca-Cola or whatever. You know, if you refer to the soda as a Coke or something like that, similar thing. Bondo is just a brand name. It is not a product. So just like Evercoat is a brand of body filler, Bondo is a brand of body filler. But just kind of became known out there as the trade name. You know, this is Bondo. So, but actually, you know, it's just body filler. There's different. Body filler comes with different properties. Some of them are a little bit creamier, a little bit easier to apply. They make them that's easier to sand, but also, you know, the easier to sand and some of the little bit creamier, you know, the cost goes up a little bit. So it's all basically the same stuff, you know, a body filler that is used to put on a dent to fill small imperfections. You never want to put body filler more than an 1/8 inch. You know, you don't want to build it up more than that. And it's always better to use a number of thin coats, sand it out, find your highs and lows or whatever, and put another coat. You don't want to try to do it with one coat. There's some different types of spreaders I have here. You can use different ones. Plastic spreaders can be used. I mean, you can use these on any different types of dents. You see they have different sizes. Now where I like to use plastic spreaders is somewhere let's say I was doing a dent in a concave area like this, I can get some body fill on this plastic spreader, and I can kind of make a spreader fit the contour a little bit. So, yeah, it fit that. You can't do that with a steel spreader. So these come in handy sometimes. I personally like using the metal ones, and they come in depending on the size of dent you have, the different sizes. Whenever you buy a gallon of body filler new, you'll notice that when you open it up, it may be separated. You can kind of see where the materials in it have separated a little bit. You don't want to start using it. You want to mix it up. If you don't have a paint shaker, you can use a stick and kind of stir it up some. But you want it consistent, one color. You don't want it separated. And the same thing with the hardener. Every time you want to do this, I mean, if you're going like from one application to the next, and you know the same day or whatever, you're probably all right. But whenever you start to use it, it's the beginning of a new day or whatever, this hardener will separate on you. So what you do in order to mix that up, you just mix it in the tube. It's called kneading. You want to push the air out, because if you don't, you won't be able to push it too good. Tighten it back up where you have plenty of room. You're basically just mixing that up. You want to do that, mix it up really good. Because if you don't, it'll look like a colored water comes out first. Kneaded, and we're going to apply some of the body filler.
Tell me about your palette. What's this paper made out of?
Okay, you want to, whenever mixing your body filler, you want to use, put it on some type of surface. Now you don't want to use cardboard or anything like that, because cardboard can absorb some of your resins and stuff like that. And so you want to use, they make plastic boards, you know, something plastic would be fine. Steel, you could use steel. I've even have heard of guys using glass, something that you can't absorb any of the resins into. They've also have these tear out sheets, which is this type of paper does not absorb the resins in the body filler, so this would be fine. But you do not want to use cardboard. So we've got a small dent over there. You want to try to put about the amount of body filler for that dent, which is not going to take much. I was just a dent probably a little bigger than a hell dent. So I'm going to use a paint stick just to get a little bit out. And I'm going to put the rest of the body filler back in this can. Now, without the hardener, this body filler will not harden, but some of the stuff will evaporate in it, and it'll get kind of thick and hard to use. So every time you're done, and plus, you never want to stuff to fall in there, you know, because that can get in there later. And another thing you never want to do is stick something that's like if you was mixing this up and get partly hardened body filler back in there, you'd never ever think that you're going to save some body filler. Oh, I didn't use it all. Let's put it back in the can. Don't do that. That'll just, you know, mess the whole can up. So as soon as you're done, put the lid back on, just to keep it fresh.
They don't make it thinner for this stuff, do they?
No, not that I'm aware of. Now, you sure don't want no trash to get mixed in there. So the rule of thumb is, to every golf ball size of body filler, you want about 1 inch of hardener, you know, or I've also heard dime size, you know, to a golf ball about a dime size. So I'd say that's probably about a golf ball there. So I'm going to put about 1 inch. Or sometimes if I have an area that I'm going to have a body filler over, I just kind of go across it, or almost. So that's probably good right there. Now the important thing that the thing that you don't want to do with body filler is you don't want to stir it up, because that's just going to get a bunch of air created in there, and that's going to cause a bunch of pinholes. So you want to spread it in one direction. You can kind of go around. You kind of get it on your spreader and spread it back out. If you have more body filler, you can kind of get it to where you can fold it up and kind of fold it over. Not really enough here. But if you'll notice, there's streaks in it. You never want any streaks in it. You want it to be one consistent color. So you just keep mixing until you have all the streaks out of it. As you can see now, all the streaks are taken out of it. It's one consistent color. So we're ready to apply the body filler. Now you only have a certain amount of time because this stuff has interacted with each other. It's mixed up, and this stuff is going to start hardening on you. So you need to get it on there. You've only got probably about 5-10 minutes of workable time. So just put a thin coat on there. Now allow it to dry. You've got a certain amount of time that it can dry before it's fully hardened. You can use what you call a cheese grater. You wouldn't want to do it on such a small dent. On a bigger dent though, you can use a cheese grater and you can grade a lot of it off. Or before it completely dries, you can use some 36, just kind of level it out a little bit. On a small dent like this, you can probably just go ahead and let it dry completely. I would even probably use 36 on this. I would start out with 80 on a small dent. All right, now we're going to talk about blocking your body filler out. It's already had body filler applied. Dent's been repaired, body filler applied. And now we've got blocks come in different sizes. Generally, you want to use the biggest block that you can, depending on the size of the dent. Smaller dent, that of course would be probably too much there. So you can use a smaller block. But the bigger block you use, the more level your body filler is going to be. Got different grades of sandpaper. Generally, you're going to start out with something like 36 to rough it out. That'll sand it real fast. Again, on a smaller dent, that's a little bit of overkill. Probably just start with 80. But a considerable, a pretty good sized dent, start with 36. And then you can move to 80 grit, which will eliminate your 36 grit scratches. It's a finer. And then before you prime, you'll finish it out with 150. So I'm going to start out with 80 grit on this one. One of the biggest mistakes whenever sanding body filler is you sand too much, undercut it, and you basically sand filler back out of the imperfections that's left behind. So you don't want to over sand it, but when you're sanding, you want to be sure and cross sand. You don't want to go one direction the whole time, or it may get in a pattern of fall in a certain contour and then have a wave in it. And also on your edges, that helps feather edge your edges in by cross sanding. So be sure and go all directions when you're sanding. You always want to keep your block level and flat also. If you see there is a spot, there's a little bit of low, you never want to try to sand that spot out of there. I mean, I've seen it to where you're trying to get it smooth and that's what you're thinking, I want it smooth and there's a spot there, let me sand that out. You want that spot to indicate itself to you. So always keep the block flat. Notice I'm cross-sanding, going back and forth different ways. I can see before I even feel at this edge, I still have an edge here. You want all your edges to kind of feather into the metal. You want them to feather into the metal where the body filler gradually fades into the metal. You don't want no definite edges like right here. That needs to be sanded out. So. Kind of concentrating more on this edge right now because that's good back here. This edge right here. And I'm gonna make that feather, that gradual edge by cross sanding. So when I get it just about to where I want, I even kind of sand lighter too. We've got an edge here from the paint, and we'll have to feather edge that, which we'll talk about that later. But right now, it feels good. I think it feels level and everything. So now I'm going to stop sanding with my 80 and I'm going to switch to 150. But before I do, I'll put just a little bit of guide coat on there. And what it's going to do is just indicate any lows or scratches that may be left behind. You just want to put just a light dust coat on. This would be the step here if you did have some imperfections or a low area that was not filled. This is when you'd go ahead and apply some more body filler to it a second time. So now I'm going to continue doing my cross sanding. See how it kind of indicates where some of the scratches are? We want to get those out, but once those are out, that's good enough, or we're going to start undercutting. So. Now what we will do is we'll get a DA with some 150 and we'll feather edge this edge where you don't feel that edge there. But you got to be careful not to hit the DA on your body filler or else you'll undercut your body filler. And we'll feather that out and then it'll be ready for We've already applied the body filler and now we switched the cartridges, and this is the glazed putty that 3M has. You just change this cartridge out. You take the body filler off and put this one on. And then you're also going to have to purge this in order to make sure that the glazing putty is mixing in with the hardener. So. Okay, glazing putty, I mentioned a few of the advantages. And also a good thing about it is that it can be applied over the painted areas if it's sanded. You want to make sure that whatever you do apply is sanded. But you can get it over the different feather edge areas, over your body filler, over your metal, and back onto your paint. This can be applied over sanded body filler, paint, primer, or metal. So it's good for making your final coat, and that way it can kind of help make your feather edge nice and smooth. Doesn't take a lot of this. I'm just going to put this on this. The glaze is a little thinner. It comes out a little bit thinner. And so you just want to spread a nice even coat over the entire surface. So you just want to go from feather edge area to the feather edge area. That will probably be enough. Again, you want to push down tight at first to make sure that it covers the surface with a tight coat. This is the first time I've ever used the glazing putty through this system. It seems to smooth really nice. You don't want to overwork it. Be sure and get it off all your edges. That'll help eliminate some of the sanding later. Get it right there a little bit more. Get it off right there. You notice that I dropped a little bit on here, on this surface right here. I'm going to go ahead and get it off of here. But I'm going to leave that on there because that's not a sanded surface, so whenever that dries, it'll just pop off really easy. If I tried to wipe that off right now, I'd just kind of smear. And again, I'm going to kind of feather edge my edges in, kind of help eliminate some sanding. Now when I get ready to sand this surface, I can hit it like I did with the other one with some 36, but instead I'm going to start with 80 on this. And just kind of level it out, and then I'm going to switch to 150 to finish it all out. The one thing you don't want to do with putty, since this is the final one, just go ahead and let this dry all the way before you start sanding. You really don't want to sand this before it fully hardens like we did the body filler. Just go ahead and let this dry. We'll sand it lightly with some 80 and then finish it out with 150. All right, now we've got the glazing putty on there. It's dried. And we're going to go ahead and start sanding. Like I said, we're going to use 80 grit just to kind of level it out, and then we're going to switch to 150. Remember I mentioned like this spot that we left on there, if we let it dry, see I just barely push it, it comes off. And this again kind of is a good reason why you want to sand something. It has to be on a sanded surface. If it's not sanded, it's not going to adhere properly. So if it does get on your painted surfaces, just wait until it dries, and it'll peel right off. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hit this, and when I'm using 80, I don't want to get 80 scratches all in here and back in here or anything like that. So I'm just kind of wanting to work in the center areas with this 80 grit, just to kind of level it out, work get it a little bit smoother, then we'll switch. Still want to cross sand. That'll ensure you got a level surface. If you just constantly go in one direction, it's going to start falling at contour, and may come out not level. Notice I'm staying within the filler area, the glazing filler area. Just kind of wanting to get a level. We still want to leave quite a bit on there that we can sand out with the 150. You notice I've got it sanded. Didn't really worry about the edges at this point because I want to do that with the 150 grit. But I got all this sanded. Needs a little bit of work in there. But we're going to go ahead and start switch to the 150. But before I do, I'm going to put a little guide coat on here. And what this is, it's a black spray that we put on here. They've got this kind, they've also got it in dry form. I'm going to spray a little bit on here. And what that's going to do is that's going to help me identify the lows. So if there's a low area or if there's a scratch that's not sanded out, you know, it's going to stay in that area, and that way it kind of helps me identify the lows that way. Okay, now I'm going to start sanding with the 150. Now I'm going to start concentrating more on these edges, and be sure to cross sand those edges out, and that's what's going to help feather it into the painted surface. You can see right here that that showed me that there's still a little bit of a low area there. I think it's going to sand out, but I am starting to hit metal and the body filler a little bit, so I don't want to sand too much more. If it actually doesn't sand out pretty fast, you may have to put on some more glaze in that area. Concentrating on this edge right now. Cross sanding, just trying to get it to feather in good. That area did block out fine, but I can feel there's still a little bit of an edge right there that I need to finish getting out. And also going back and forth to each side like I'm doing, that helps you do the cross sand, you know, to get it good and cross sanded. But also gives me a break from one arm to the next as well. Work out on it over here a little bit. And as you're sanding, you just kind of feel of it and make sure that it is coming out level. And that'll tell you quite a bit. And remember to use the flat of your hand, don't use your fingertips. Sand in all different directions. I'm going to sand this way just a little bit. Alright, here's a little tip also. Your sandpaper is going to get sanding dust on it. It's going to make it where it doesn't sand quite as good. If you get an old scuff pad or something and just rub it on there a couple times, that helps keep it clean. It prolongs the life of the sandpaper and helps you sand this off a little quicker. So getting pretty close. It's starting to feel level. Still need a little bit right here. Edges are feeling pretty good. So sand just a little bit more and we'll just about have this. Alright, now everything's feathered in. You don't feel any of your feather edges. This has got all your small scratches filled in from your 36 grit and your 80 grit. And now we have it finished out in 150 grit sandpaper. So now we're repairing this small dent. We had a small dent here. We pulled the dent out and straightened it, and then we put some body filler on, and we put some glazing putty on here. Now we've got it sanded, and it's ready to go ahead and start priming so we can block sand it. So what we need to do is before we prime is we need to make sure that the adjacent panels don't get primer on them. A lot of these primers that we have can carry a long ways, which may result in primer getting on an area that you don't want to paint, that you're not going to be painting. So want to prevent that, the overspray. So what we're going to do, we're going to back mask, and anytime you're priming, you want to always go to the edge of everything. When you're painting, you can drop it down a little bit to where you don't bridge on the edge and have any edges. But for priming, we go all the way to the edge, but I'm still going to go ahead and back mask, and the way we do that, so I'm just down in the edge here. And I'm going to go around the edges like this, pull it up. And this will give me something to tape to here. We'll go ahead and do this edge. And this will prevent any primer getting into the areas that you're not wanting to block sand out, because anywhere primer does, the primer surfacer, anywhere that it gets on the surface at, you are going to be required to sand that. So now we've got a sticky area around here that we can mask, and I'm going to go ahead and back mask here just with a piece of paper. One thing you don't want, and the reason we're doing all this back masking, is you don't want any hard edges, because that's very hard to sand off when you go to priming. So what we're going to do, and even though we're back masking, that's going to result in a softer edge here. If you prime all the way to this edge, it won't be quite as a hard edge. But also, I'm not going to try paint clear to this edge trying to build an edge at all. I just want the overspray to get in that area, and that should block out very, very easy by doing it that way. Just go ahead and outline it with some paper. Now you can see that all the way around the repair area is masked off. Nothing's going to get inside the jambs because it's masked up all the way to the edges. And so that way we can prime without worrying about getting in those areas. The primer can carry further than this, so what we need to do to protect the adjacent panels is we'll get a piece of plastic and we'll put over the entire car, and we'll just cut an area out right here and then take the plastic to the masking paper. Okay, we've got this plastic we put over the whole car. Now we're going to cut it out. Now if you was doing just a real small area, you may make it get by without covering the whole car. But you know, I like to do it just to be safe. Just takes a couple of minutes to drop a piece of plastic over it, and you know, prevent hours of trying to get it off. Especially if you have a new car, you certainly don't want to get overspray on it. But so we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to cut this out. If I can grab it. I'm just going to cut an area. Okay, now we've got the whole car covered, so there's no overspray going to get on any of the car. We have all the edges by back masking, which is going to leave a softer edge. And we've got a back mask here, which is going to leave a softer edge. And now we can get it ready to prime. What we'll need to do now is we'll blow it off, wipe it down with wax or grease remover and a tack cloth, and we're going to put a couple coats of epoxy primer. We have some metal here, a little bit of metal showing, so epoxy will help with corrosion, and it'll help. We've got the primer mixed up, and the way this works, you have to buy this adapter that goes with it, with this system, and you just push this lid on here. And the nice thing about this is that when you're done, you just take this off, you can throw the liner away, and then you just have your gun to worry about cleaning. You don't have to keep a cup clean, things like that. So what I'm going to do is wipe this down with wax and grease remover one more time. Making sure that you are working on a clean surface is an important part. Ensuring good adhesion and preventing problems like fish eyes and things like that. Okay, we'll let that flash off for a little bit and dry. And then, just when you prime it, if you just have an old tack rag, I wouldn't necessarily get a new one for it, but you can kind of just lightly go over it with the tack rag, make sure some of the dirt is off. Then also with priming, you want to always make sure that you do wear an approved respirator for spraying. And you also want to be in an area like this, in a prep station or a paint booth. And that you have your fans on. Okay, as you can see, we got our first coat on and it's flashing off. Be sure and check your procedure pages to see what the flash time should be in between coats. And we're going to go ahead and put 2 coats of this epoxy primer on. The first coat we went the full length of this. The second coat we're going to come back a little bit and not go quite as far. And what that does is allows a thinner build to be here so that you don't have a hard edge when you're trying to block sand this out. So we'll go ahead and put another coat of this on, and then we'll mix up some primer surfacer. Alright, we've got the gun clean and out of the washer now. I'm going to go ahead and wipe it off a little bit. And now we can get ready to go ahead and put the primer surfacer. And for this particular job, we're going to use Shopline JP202, which is a primer surfacer. And what that is used to do is to fill the scratches, and we block it out and make a nice smooth surface. So, like I said, you always want to be sure and look over your procedure pages. If you notice on this, it shows that we put 2 coats on, so you want to wait at least 30 minutes before applying your primer surfacer. And you have up to 72 hours, which is 3 days, to go ahead and apply the surfacer. If you go longer than 3 days or 72 hours, you'll have to scuff the surface to provide a mechanical adhesion rather than the chemical adhesion. So we're going to mix up about the same amount. And if we look over here on 202, and depending on what products you're using, wherever you buy the products, be sure and ask for these procedure pages so that you can look at them, and it tells you, how many coats should be applied, the flash time, and things like that. So here it shows that you mix it 4 to 1, so it means 4 parts of JP202 to 1 part catalyst, which is 301 for this application. So we're going to mix this 4 to 1. So you look on here, find the 4 to 1, and probably we'll just go 2 and 2 parts here to the catalyst. So there's our primer surfacer. Our catalyst in. And it's always a good idea to be sure to put these lids on immediately, because this catalyst is moisture sensitive, and you don't want that lid left open. And another idea, if you use products a lot, and especially if there's going to be different paintings, now here at a school setting, there's different students all the time, so you want to be sure to have, like our sealer that we use, we have the peak pages taped up here so that you can look at it and know how to mix it. Okay, well, it's been the 30 minutes that's recommended, so we can go ahead and get a strainer. Now, like I said, the epoxy primers are the one that takes the induction time. This is primer surfacer. There is no induction time. As soon as it's mixed, you can pour and spray it. Get that mixed. Put your lid on. And you want to be sure and always remember to put this ring on. It has been left off before, and without that, that lid's not going to stay on there. Now we're ready to apply our 2 coats of primer surface. Okay, as I mentioned, if we've waited at least 30 minutes and no longer than 72 hours, we can just come in and we can spray right over that. You can tack it if you want to, but it is ready to spray, so we're going to go ahead and hook up our paint gun, turn our fan on, and go ahead and put our 2 coats on. Okay, I just had a problem. I don't know if you saw it on film, but we had a drop that dropped on the car, and I stopped to see what the problem was. And what happened is I had the liner in here, and this will happen if you're not careful. And I popped this on, wasn't paying attention. When I did, can you focus in on that? I kind of caught the edge of that and pushed it in. And this got kind of pushed down in there just a little bit, which didn't make the seal. And then I put everything on. So make sure that this does stay on top here. And that's probably had I opened the gun up and just put it back on top and make sure. This doesn't happen often, but every once in a while, if you're not paying attention, that will happen. So that was a mistake that we can learn right here, try to avoid that. Okay, I went ahead and got the first coat on. We'll let it dry for a little bit, and then we'll come back and put our second coat on. Okay, we got 2 coats of epoxy on, we got 2 coats of primer surfacer on, and now what we need to do is allow it to dry the recommended time, and we'll just let this dry till tomorrow, and then we can use some guide coat, put that on there, and block it out. And probably, you know, if there's any need to do any more blocking, we may have to do this process again, although I think this is going to block out fine. One last thing I'll mention, just so you kind of know what kind of paint guns we're using. Primer, you want to use bigger tips, 1.6. The P page will tell you what's recommended, and we're using a DeVelvis gun.
Yeah, my name's John at Butler Community College. We just epoxied this, and for adhesion purposes, and then corrosion protection, and then we put some primer surfacer on it to give us something to sand, so we can get it ready for paint. So we're gonna jump into this with some 320 grit on the blocks, so we don't leave bad scratches. That way we'll hopefully won't have to reprime it. And you're going to want to put some guide coat on it to show your loads. There's a dry guide coat and a spray guide coat. I prefer the dry. It's a little easier to work with. You just dab it on here. Not that much left. Make sure you get it all over all parts of the panel. When you're sanding on this, you want to make sure to make nice cross coats just all the way across the panel in both directions to cross sand it. That way you don't leave any waves in your paint. You want to clean this off, since it's a real high grit, it's going to get a lot of dust in there, and that can leave some deep scratches and swirls in the sanding. Make sure to keep the block very flat. You don't want to follow the line. And you can see how it's leaving some guide coat there. You don't want to try to sand that out. You want to leave that. That's what the whole point of the guide coat is to leave spots to show you your lows. These might still be able to be sanded out, but make sure you don't turn the board. Just keep going across, and if it sands out, fine. If not, you're going to want to go down. Once you start seeing metal, you're going to want to stop. It's indicating that you have a low there. Okay, I'm going to switch to the smaller block now. Make sure you keep cleaning off your sandpaper. And the smaller block just makes it a little bit easier to deal with the panel, since it's a smaller panel.
Oh.
See, we got a real soft edge here. That's because we backmasked. It's one of the benefits of doing it. Now we're just going to feather this edge out real quick. Okay, now I got a DA with some 500 grit sandpaper and an inner surface pad. We're going to sand this down, minimize some of those 320 scratches. That way, when we're painting, it doesn't leave any sand scratches or anything. We're just going to start here. This was already sanded with 800 for blending, so you're not really going to want to go that far. Just these areas, you can actually see the 320 scratches through there. And just start in there, slowly work your way back on the panel. Now that we've got this completely blocked out, got it scuffed up, now we just need to clean it off, get it in the booth, mask it up, and it's ready for paint.